He want to play crazy. He wasn't crazy when he killed my son, man. He wasn't crazy then, but he crazy now. All of a sudden, he crazy now.
What the hell is wrong with you? You are a sick person, and I wish to God somebody would you up in pieces, because that's what you deserve.
This is Scott Schweikert. In December 2003, Schweikert collaborated with noted criminal Stephen Lorenzo to end the lives of two men, 26-year-old Jason Galehouse and Michael Wachholtz. The two murderers lived in Tampa, Florida, and the crimes these two committed are every parent's worst nightmare. Schweikert and Lorenzo left the Tampa nightclub with guests on two separate occasions, but their victims didn't live to see the next day.
Mr. Lorenzo sitting on the bed with Mr. Galehouse lying on the bed, tied to the bed, at his ankles and at his hands, did a chokehold on Mr. Galehouse from behind. That chokehold is what killed him.
Their victims were drugged, sexually assaulted, and tortured before being killed. But that's not all. After the damage was done, they did unspeakable things to the corpses of these innocent people.
After Mr. Galehouse was killed, his body was wrapped and put on a trailer in the driveway of Mr. Lorenzo's home. Mr. Schweikert and Mr. Lorenzo went to breakfast. They went to Home Depot to buy supplies. The supplies that they needed included contractor garbage bags, the large, very strong garbage bags. They then went back to Mr. Lorenzo's house. Mr. Schweikert will tell you that they carried Mr. Galehouse's body into the garage where he was dismembered. Head and torso stayed together. Arm, leg, and leg.
The two men were charged with first-degree murder, and Schweikert pleaded guilty to avoid the death sentence. Lorenzo was already serving time for a federal drug charge and would receive his sentence whenever he was released. However, in his statement, he claimed that he was a bondage master and that the victims had agreed to participate in a bondage video with him. But things quickly spiraled out of control, and they realized that the victims would call the police on them, so they decided to kill them. The lurid details of this case shocked the local community, especially the friends of Jason Galehouse.
I can tell you right now I am sick of my stomach just to have to look at your disgusting face. Yeah, that's right. Make a face, you creep.
They had to sit through court proceedings and listen to the cold and calculating way their friend was murdered. During the trial, Jason's mother gave an emotional and angry victim impact statement. She has been waiting for years to confront her son's killers and didn't hold back.
Away from me. I don't even have a grave, a body, or a tombstone. I have the city dump with my son ground up like hamburger meat in the dirt.
Jason's mother may have wished Jason's killers to hell, but Isaiah Blue's mother was even more emotional.
I cannot help but to feel sorry for you. You are too young to be here. You have not only stolen from me, you stolen from those that love you too. You stole from yourself.
This is Mitchell Savickas. In January 2016, a Michigan teenager, Isaiah Blue, was shot dead by 19-year-old Mitchell Savickas, who was accompanied by his then 16-year-old brother, Daniel Benavides. Benavides was in possession of a toy gun, but took part in the robbery. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a sentence of 20 to 40 years in prison. Savickas, who was 19 at the time of the crime, was convicted of felony murder and sentenced to life in prison. Savickas and Blue had crossed paths in juvenile detention, and Savickas admitted in court that he didn't like Blue. Savickas represented himself in court and claimed that he shot Blue in self-defense. The CCTV footage and evidence gathered by the police suggested otherwise. During the trial, the judge called Isaiah Blue's mother, Clarissa Seaton, to give a victim impact statement. Amidst tears and grief, she faced her son's killers. She called them two cowards with a gun who decided to play God. This is the heartbreaking moment when Clarissa Seaton confronted her son's killers.
I cannot help but to feel sorry for you. You are too young to be here. You have not only stolen from me, you stolen from from those that love you too. You stole from yourself.
Savickas indicated he had nothing to say when given a chance to speak, but Benavides apologized to Blue's family.
I want to apologize to Isaiah Blue's mother, his friends, and the rest of his family. I'm not a good speaker and all, but these words coming from my heart.
He showed remorse, and we hope he adheres to Seaton's advice for his sake. You would hope most killers would be remorseful, like Mitchell Savickas, but then we meet Lucas Kendall.
When he was trying to get away from you, you were trying to get away from you, man. And you kept shooting him while his back was under the truck. You kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him in his back was turned to you, man.
Born on May 5th, 1986, Kendall is now 37 years old. Kendall was convicted of second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder. He was found guilty of firing 8 shots at 2 people, killing one and leaving the other paralyzed. According to Smathers, there were no threats exchanged before Kendall opened fire. It was a regular day and they were doing their business when the shooting happened. Kendall decided to represent himself during the trial, which was a risky move considering the severity of the charges. During the trial, Kendall told jurors that the evidence was fabricated because he was white and his victims were African American. Despite the judge's warning, Kendall continued speaking, claiming he was arrested due to the George Zimmerman shooting. When all these didn't work, Kendall decided to plead insanity. And that's when Kiwan's father, Donald Byrd, lost it. In an emotional rant, he insisted Kendall is very sane and should be in prison, not a hospital. Here is Donald on the brink of tears, demanding justice be served.
You don't need to be laying no mental hospital. He need to go to prison, man. Come on, sir. He want to play crazy. All of a sudden he crazy now. You want to lay in a mental hospital? You don't murder my son, man, for nothing?
Heartrending, isn't it? Who would accept such a level of disrespect from someone who recently killed your child and is claiming insanity? Donald was eventually escorted out of the courtroom to give him time to calm down. The evidence against Kendall was strong. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a mandatory 25-year minimum term for the second-degree murder of Byrd and 30 years with a 25-year minimum mandatory term for the attempted second-degree murder of Smathers. Donald Byrd may have lost it in court, but he's still cool-headed compared to Randall Margraves, although, in his case, his children did not have their lives taken from them, but these kids lost something equally as important as life itself. This is Randall Margraves. Margraves is in a Michigan courtroom as the father of 3 daughters who were victims of former Olympics gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar was a former USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University doctor who was convicted of sexually assaulting over 250 girls and young women under the guise of medical treatment. Nassar worked as a doctor for USA Gymnastics, including during 4 Olympic Games and at Michigan State University. He was a faculty member and treated athletes from various sports teams. Nassar's abuse was exposed in 2016 by a joint investigation by the Indianapolis Star and the USA Today network. The investigation revealed that USA Gymnastics had ignored and covered up allegations of sexual abuse by coaches and staff for decades, including Nassar's abuse. During Nassar's trial, 2 of his daughters delivered victim impact statements.
My mind immediately thought about the time when I was 13, just a kid, laying on a table at MSU, and you put your ungloved hands all over my rear and slipped your thumb into the most private area of my body.
Then, without gloves, Nassar accidentally touched me in a place where no man has any business being without permission.
A pissed Randall Margraves requested 5 minutes alone with Nassar. The judge declined, and some people laughed it off. He then requested for just a minute, and when he was also turned down, he lost control.
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon.
I have
Would
a
you
feeling.
do that?
That is not how
Yes or
our.
no?
No, sir, I can't.
Would you
do
give me
that.
1 minute?
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal
Well, I'm
system
gonna have
works.
to just
Press Morgan. I'll
He lunged at the disgraced doctor, but the court deputies were able to restrain him before he did any harm. Nassar was arrested in 2016 and charged with several counts of sexual assault. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges of sexual assault and child pornography possession, and was sentenced to up to 175 years in prison. Margrave's behavior might have constituted contempt of court, but it was understandable. Even the judge indicated so. Margrave's lunge was a decent attempt, but then there is Van Terry. This is Van Terry. Terry is in Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court at the trial of Ohio serial killer Michael Madison. Imagine being a parent who has just lost their child to a senseless act of violence. That was the reality for Van Terry, whose 18-year-old daughter, Sherelda Terry, was strangled by Michael Madison. This convicted serial killer also murdered 28-year-old Shatisha Sheely and 38-year-old Angela Deskins. As a grieving father, Terry was given a chance to speak and express his pain during the sentencing hearing. But as he stood at the podium, expressing his pain, he looked back and noticed Madison smirking at him. And that's when Terry lost control. He lunged across the defendant's table, barely missing Madison's face, and fell into the packed gallery of the courtroom. The whole incident was caught on camera.
All right, whoever's in the red hat, you're excused. Red hat must leave.
The scene was chaotic, and court officers had to intervene quickly to protect Madison from Terry's rage and restrain Terry. 38-year-old Michael Madison appeared unfazed by the incident. Eventually, he was found guilty of 3 counts of sexually motivated aggravated murder, kidnapping, non-consensual sex, and a couple of other crimes. He was handed the death penalty. He's currently on death row at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. Terry's actions were unacceptable in court, but many people wished he had punched the murderer and wiped away the smirk from his face. If you're one of those people, wait till you see what happened when Tonio Hughes got his hands on his son's murderer. This is Tonio Hughes. Hughes is in a Cincinnati court for the trial of Deshaun Brown. In 2020, Hughes' partner, 29-year-old Nitisha Lattimore, and their 3-year-old son Nilo were murdered. But while Nitisha's body was found near a bridge, the body of little Nilo was not found. Investigators suggest that the body was thrown into the Ohio River. The suspect, 20-year-old Deshaun Brown, is accused of committing this heinous crime and has been declared fit to stand trial by the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office. Brown was Nitisha's ex-boyfriend. He had a history of assault, and Nitisha had filed a no-contact motion against him. Brown's lawyers have filed a motion to exclude their client from possibly facing the death penalty, claiming that he is mentally ill, which, under Ohio law, could prevent him from receiving a death penalty sentence. The judge wasn't sold and requested that an independent expert evaluate the accused. It was during the motion hearing that Hughes attacked Brown from behind. He punched him repeatedly on the head and neck before he was tackled and held down by court officers. This is the moment Hughes lets Brown feel some of his rage. Hughes was charged with contempt of court and sent to the Hamilton County Justice Center for 7 days. He was released 3 days before his sentence was due. But don't you feel he should be applauded rather than punished? If you thought these reactions were crazy, watch how some of the world's craziest murderers refuse to show remorse to victims' families in court.
I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Teresa Lynn's death.